For years, fans and critics alike have speculated about the true side of Johnny Depp beyond the films, the public appearances, and the tabloid headlines. From his iconic roles in Pirates of the Caribbean and Edward Scissorhands to the highly publicized trials and controversies, Depp's life has always seemed like a story written in headlines before the movie even begins. And now, at 61, he has finally confirmed what many have long suspected. In a recent interview, Depp broke his silence, addressing rumors, controversies, and questions that have lingered for over a decade. The revelation isn't about a single scandal or a moment in time, it's about the truth behind his personal struggles, his resilience, and the pressures of living in the public eye. Fans who have followed his journey will recognize the honesty and vulnerability in his words, painting a picture of a man who has faced intense scrutiny while remaining remarkably private about the realities of his life. According to sources, Depp's revelation also touches on his creative process, personal relationships, and the moments in which he felt misunderstood by both the media and the public. For years, speculation ran rampant, often fueled by misinterpretation, exaggeration, or incomplete information. Depp's candidness now provides clarity, answering questions that many have quietly wondered for years. The reaction from fans has been immediate and overwhelming. Social media is flooded with support, shock, and admiration for the star who has always been seen as enigmatic and unconventional. Critics are weighing in, dissecting the statements, and debating what it means for his legacy. One thing is clear: Johnny Depp's disclosure is more than a personal confession. It's a statement about truth, perception, and the fine line between public life and private reality. This revelation may finally put to rest the speculations that have followed Depp for decades, but it also opens a new chapter in understanding the man behind the legend. For years, Johnny Depp's life has been a puzzle for the public. Every role, every interview, every court appearance seemed to add another piece, but the full picture remained elusive. Fans adored his eccentric charm, while tabloids dissected every detail of his personal and professional life. Yet behind the cameras and the headlines, Depp carried a quiet burden, a life constantly scrutinized, misunderstood, and sensationalized in ways that often strayed far from reality. The period leading up to this revelation was marked by tension and speculation. Following his high-profile legal battles and media controversies, Depp had retreated from the public eye, choosing to focus on projects that mattered personally rather than professionally. Friends describe this time as a quiet recalibration, a chance for him to reflect on decades of fame, mistakes, and misunderstood intentions. While the public saw legal documents and dramatic headlines, Depp was grappling with questions that only he could answer. Who am I beyond the roles? What truths about my life have been distorted? How do I reclaim my narrative? His closest collaborators noted that Depp had always been an intensely private person, preferring to let his art speak for itself. Behind the scenes, he maintained a meticulous schedule, balancing work on films, music, and personal projects while shielding his personal life from unnecessary exposure. Yet, despite these efforts, rumors and speculations never stopped. Every public appearance sparked debate. Every interview, no matter how carefully worded, was analyzed to the smallest detail. The narrative about him often shifted depending on who was watching, leaving Depp in a constant state of cautious observation. The decision to finally speak openly came after years of reflection and encouragement from trusted confidants. Depp realized that while the public would never know every detail of his life, he could at least present the truth from his perspective. The revelation was not about scoring points, defending actions, or countering criticism. It was about authenticity, honesty, and reclaiming control over a story that had been told about him for far too long. In this moment of clarity, Depp chose to address the rumors, confirm the suspicions, and reveal insights that no one could have fully anticipated. Fans and critics alike sensed the gravity of the statement before it was even published. The calm, deliberate tone hinted at years of contemplation and the courage to finally step forward, no matter the consequences, for those who had followed him for decades. This was more than a headline. It was a turning point. Johnny Depp, at 61, was no longer silent, and for the first time in years, the world would hear his story from him alone. After deciding to finally speak publicly, Johnny Depp knew he would be confronting more than just rumors. He would be facing the shadows of his own past. The years of fame, tumultuous relationships, and highly publicized legal battles had left deep marks, both visible and unseen. While many saw only the flamboyant characters on screen, few understood the personal toll of living under constant scrutiny. The weeks leading up to his revelation were spent in reflection. Depp revisited old journals, reread letters from friends and colleagues, and carefully considered how to present the truth without inflaming controversy or misrepresentation. He wanted honesty, but he also wanted context, the kind of context that had often been missing from the narratives shaped by tabloids and social media speculation. Friends and collaborators noted that he appeared calmer during this period than he had in years. The chaos of the past seemed to have given way to a new sense of perspective. Johnny has always been thoughtful, but now there's an intentionality in how he approaches life and his career, said one longtime colleague. He's making decisions that honor his truth, not the story others want to tell about him. At the same time, Depp prepared for backlash. Speaking publicly about events that had been sensationalized for years was risky. Critics, fans, and the media would dissect every word. Some might accuse him of revisionism. Others might claim he was seeking sympathy. But Depp understood that authenticity often comes with resistance, and he was willing to accept that in order to reclaim his narrative. The revelation itself focused on what most had quietly suspected, that the man behind the headlines was more complex than public perception allowed. He spoke about personal struggles, the pressures of fame, and the resilience required to survive in an industry that rarely forgives mistakes. But he also highlighted his passions, relationships that had sustained him, and the creative pursuits that gave his life purpose beyond the public gaze. Through this process, Depp found a renewed sense of agency. He was no longer at the mercy of rumors or tabloid narratives. By telling his story in his own words, he reclaimed control over the conversations surrounding his life, providing clarity for fans who had long felt conflicted and curious about the truth. By the time Johnny Depp made the decision to go public with his revelations, he had already begun a profound journey of self-reclamation. For decades, the world had projected stories onto him, narratives shaped by gossip columns, social media speculation, and sensationalized headlines. While some of these stories were rooted in fragments of truth, most were distorted, creating a public persona that only loosely resembled the real Johnny Depp. Depp spent considerable time reflecting on what it meant to separate his public identity from his private self. He revisited pivotal moments in his life, the early rise to fame, the transformative roles that defined his career, and the personal challenges that had tested his resilience. Each memory was a piece of a puzzle, a way to understand how he had been shaped not just by the world, but also by the choices he had made under pressure and scrutiny. Friends and collaborators observed a subtle but unmistakable shift. Depp was calmer, more deliberate, and more intentional in his interactions. He was choosing projects based on personal fulfillment rather than external expectation, focusing on creativity rather than validation. He also began reconnecting with passions that had been set aside, including music, art, and philanthropy activities that reminded him of who he was outside the glare of public attention. The revelation itself became an act of empowerment. By sharing the truth, Depp was reclaiming his narrative and dismantling the false constructs built around him. Over decades, he addressed past controversies, clarified misunderstandings, and reflected on personal growth. The goal was not to seek absolution, but to provide transparency, a candid glimpse into a life that had been scrutinized relentlessly. Even more importantly, this process helped Depp confront the emotional toll of fame. He acknowledged the anxiety, isolation, and misunderstandings that had accompanied his career, while also recognizing the resilience he had developed in response. Fans and colleagues alike were struck by the honesty and vulnerability in his words, a reminder that the man behind the roles was as human as any of them, navigating challenges and seeking clarity in a world that often misconstrued him. Depp's immediate priority was personal stability. For years, the constant attention had forced him to adapt, often at the expense of his emotional well-being. Now, he focused on creating boundaries that allowed him to thrive without compromising his mental health. Close friends and collaborators noted that he was more selective about the projects he took on, dedicating his time to ventures that reflected his values and artistic passions. Rather than external expectations, music, art, and film became the cornerstones of his renewed life. Depp returned to his creative roots with a sense of liberation, exploring projects that he had long wanted to pursue but had postponed due to public scrutiny. Collaborations with longtime friends and musicians reignited his passion, while carefully chosen film roles allowed him to reconnect with audiences in a meaningful way. Each endeavor was infused with the authenticity that had long been overshadowed by gossip and controversy. Equally important was Depp's approach to relationships and personal connections. He invested in people who understood him beyond his public persona, fostering friendships and bonds that were grounded in trust and mutual respect. Family, friends, and colleagues became his support system, providing stability and perspective as he navigated life post-revelation. Public perception, though still a factor, no longer dictated his choices. By taking control of his narrative, Depp demonstrated that truth, honesty, and self-awareness could coexist with fame. The world had speculated for decades, but now he could live beyond the shadows of rumor, embracing a life of integrity and purpose. Looking ahead, Depp's journey emphasizes resilience and the power of self-reclamation. He proved that even amidst immense scrutiny, a person could reclaim their story, pursue genuine creativity, and build a life that reflects their true self. The revelation at 61 was more than a confession, it was a declaration of independence, a statement that Johnny Depp would no longer be defined by speculation, but by the choices he made and the authenticity he cultivated.